Let's talk about Labyrinth of Galleria, a dungeon crawler game by NIS coming out on February 14th. I was lucky enough to get a preview copy of the game and have been playing it for an unspecified amount of time, and it's pretty interesting. So the game is known to be a spiritual successor of sorts to Labyrinth of Refrain, a game that I never really did play. I did play a demo of it because it was available on the Switch, and it was pretty cool, and I wanted to get into it, but the full game, I wasn't really sure if I really did want to get it or not. I do play a fair amount of dungeon crawlers, but it's not really like a mainstay game for me, so keep that in mind for the purposes of this first impressions review. Also keep in mind that, holy cow, I got wrecked in this game. I'm not gonna lie, I got absolutely destroyed, and I had a really hard time making any progress in the game whatsoever at all. So before we get into that, I do want to talk about the difficulty levels. There is 3 different ones. You start off on what they call Ordinary World, and it's the standard difficulty level. You'll collect a resource called mana as you play through the game and travel through the dungeon, and you use that to unlock a bunch of different things, including the different difficulty levels. So it's pretty cheap to get the easy difficulty level, and it's really expensive to get the nightmare level. So my full experience is just on the standard level, and then later on in the easier level, because I just wanted to see what that would be like, and I was actually kind of hoping it would speed things up. This game is kind of cool in the way that when you actually change the difficulty level, it changes some of the parameters of the game. And what I mean by that is, if you want to play easier, you want to have the dungeon be easier when you're fighting the monsters, you want, not to die as much in your encounters, then it comes at a cost. You will collect less mana, which is pretty dang important to get, and so it does kind of increase the amount that you have to play. Even though it's easier, it doesn't make it faster, and I think a lot of people actually kind of might like that. A lot of people probably won't like that. I didn't mind it too much. It wasn't actually what stopped me from progressing in the game. Like I said, I wasn't able to play on Nightmare difficulty, but if you do play on Nightmare, you actually get more mana, and the conversion rates for it as they put it in the game are lessened. So the game starts out where you play this ultra cute, like kind of, tropey character that you've definitely seen before if you played Disgaea or a lot of NIS games really in general. Her name's Eureka. She's very bubbly and cutesy, kind of airheaded, and definitely very naive. Eureka sees this flyer in her local town nearby saying that they need help for someone who can find things and stuff in this manor that's nearby. So she shows up thinking she's the perfect fit for it, and instead of having this wonderful job where she's just searching for lost items, she actually finds out that a witch needs her to go into a labyrinth that everyone's pretty much died going into. You don't actually go into the dungeon yourself. I mean, obviously as the game player, you're traveling through the dungeon, but the reality of how it works in the story world is Eureka works as kind of a medium of sorts, and you use puppets, and the puppets travel through the labyrinth for you. They go through, they fight the enemies, they discover things. It has an auto mapping system, which is cool for those that like that. And later on in the game, you also get some ways to kind of mark different things and make notes on the map, which again is kind of a standard fare and something that's really needed for a lot of these kinds of games. So basically, before you go into the labyrinth, you have kind of a main goal that you work through, and then you try to maneuver your way through, and it is definitely not as easy as it sounds like it could be. Outside of the challenges of monsters and traps and pitfalls, because those are a huge thing in this game, is falling into the abyss and just dying. There's also the challenge of just finding things. It was so hard for me to try to figure out how to get from one floor to another. There's switches that open certain doors, and then later on you get this mechanic that allows you to break through walls, and that really threw me for a huge loop. There was one specific item I needed to find. I'm just gonna throw the spoiler out here. It was literally right when you enter the dungeon, turn to your right, smash the wall, you'll get what you need. And that confused the crap out of me. I had already gone down 3 floors of this labyrinth, and I was just fighting my way through. I was running into harder and harder enemies. There's even ones that are denoted as tougher enemies that I would run into that would just flat wipe me. Couldn't even run from the battle, even on easy mode, just straight decimation. It was definitely kind of a wild ride. This is a game you will absolutely just die in a lot. It's just, it becomes a fact of life in this game. And while that usually bothers me quite a bit, I actually kind of liked it in this game. I don't know, it felt almost like roguelike in a way. And, you know, many dungeon crawlers are like this, so that's fair enough. We talked about the story. We talked a little bit about some of the characters. It's not really a huge part of the game. Most of it is the dungeon exploration. And I actually found it really serviceable. The mechanics in the game were just completely overwhelming to me at first, but as I kept playing it and I kept getting farther, there is these little kind of event points that they call them that you run into, and they kind of fill you in on stuff or actually give you reminders of things that they told you before that you probably forgot or maybe you weren't focusing that much on. And I actually thought that was really excellent game design. It worked out really good for me. I don't really consider myself to be super dumb with games, but there is sometimes where I just too much info at once and things just start slipping out the other side of my head, if you know what I'm saying. I think one of the biggest positives for this game is the artwork. It is absolutely fantastic. I played it on my OLED Switch and it was dreamy. It was just dreamy to look at. I wanted to just always keep looking at this dungeon. It's absolutely beautiful. And I was very surprised when I plugged it in on the TV and everything got blown up on a really huge screen. It looked just as good. It kind of has a painterly vibe on some of the colorations and stuff that they do, but everything's also really clear. The monster designs are absolutely fantastic, and there seems to be a pretty dang good diversity of them. I'm always running into different things, and you know, the deeper you go, the more variety that you get as you continue. Some of the enemies even threw a little bit of interesting challenges where they're marked with specific, I want to say types, and you have to hit them with something that's the opposite of that type in order to really do true damage to them. Speaking of the damage levels, there's also some party prioritization that you can do for where they're placed in the front or the back, which they call the vanguard and the rear guard. And depending on what the characters are using for their weapons, if they are not placed properly, they could actually do as little as half of their damage. So you really need to pay attention to that a ton. There's also standard level mechanics that happen. You defeat creatures, you get XPs, you level up. But there's just so much more to it. There's weapons to be equipped. There's placement of the characters. You know, you really have to prioritize who's being equipped with what item. Some characters a little more squishier, so you're going to have to prioritize at the beginning of the game, especially when you don't have any armor, because you don't even buy it from the store. So you have to find it in the dungeon, and you have to prioritize that, like, okay, is that helmet really the best for my strong person, or maybe should I give this to the weaker person? I don't know, it just always makes you think. The game is just a very tactically thinking game, and as I kept playing it, I kept learning more, and I kept kind of refining myself. And it was addictive. It became very addictive. Along with that, the music is absolutely fantastic. If you guys like anything that is from the Skya series, you're gonna love this music. It rocks. It fits everything perfectly. It sounds beautiful. It's repetitious as heck, but it just gets stuck in your head in the most beautiful way possible. I really did appreciate it. Voiceovers are also really good. We have full English voiceover cast for this. The witch in particular, I don't know who did the VO for her or any of the vocal processing. She's fantastic. She does a lot of narration for the menu screens and stuff too, and you're really going to appreciate that. And it's nice and pleasing to the ears. Nothing seems off kilter, and it really just helps fill who these characters out a lot more just from their vocals. I really do like it. They did a great job. Overall, who do I think this game's for? Well, obviously, if you like dungeon crawlers, you're probably going to like this. I think you'd be hard-pressed not to. If you want something that's super brutally hard, you got it. If you want something that's mid-line, it may be a little bit harder on the normal side than what some people are wanting, but I still think it's a pretty medium experience on the ordinary world difficulty level. And if you want to scale it back a little bit and you want to play it a little bit easier, you're still going to be kept on your feet throughout. It's not one of those like total baby mode. It is a huge difference other than ordinary, and I'd be lying if I told you any different than that. But it is still very challenging. You still die a ton. There is still a lot of, worry of death and stuff that's going on. It just seems to be a little less brutal, and I can appreciate that. And I think if you are okay with any of those types of spectrums and you like these dungeon crawler games, this one is absolutely worth picking up. Comes out on February 14th for the Nintendo Switch. I think it's also for the PS5 and the PS4 as well. You can pre-order it now, and I can start doing coverage on it going forward. So if you want to see more, let me know. If you like this content, hit the thumbs up. If you don't, hit the thumbs down. And if you want to see more anime news, reviews, and gaming, subscribe to Yokoso Otaku. We'd love to see you up in our chats. Catch you guys on the next one.
Perhaps time hasn't been kind to it, but it doesn't have a trace of curse left in it, if it ever had any to begin with.
That's amazing! I didn't know you could sense curses so easily.
Well, you didn't collapse on the spot. That told me everything I needed to know.